Well, there we are, 12 minutes into 11 as we acknowledge World Voice Day, reminding us to pay attention to something we use on a daily basis, but really ever think about, from a health perspective, sometimes we take it for granted, and how it carries you through the day, through conversations, and how it affects your career. Our voices help us to connect and to be heard, yet many of us only notice the importance when something goes wrong. For example, voice strain, poor vocal habits can affect not just communication, but also livelihoods for people that rely on their voices to make a living. The voice is a very, very important thing. So we're going to tap in a little bit and talk about the importance of the voice, taking care of the voice. What I admire musicians for being able to do that on a daily basis. They understand, what they need to eat, when they need to rest, when they need to get their checkups and all the good stuff. Okay, so let's talk about that. Cyril Ntsibande is joining me on the line. He's a voice teacher at Music and Mario and Friends, which is a music school based here in Johannesburg in South Africa. Cyril, so wonderful to talk to you. Welcome to Channel Africa.
And all the listeners, thank you so much for taking the time, on this wonderful World Voice Day. I'm honored to, have a discussion about the voice and just, give my insight on how, just to, take care of the voice and, make it the best tool and best form of expression that we can make it. Yeah.
Absolutely. The best tool, as you rightfully said, Cyril,
Yeah.
it is World Voice Day every day for a musician or an actor or a
Yeah.
theatre practitioner. It's not just on the
Yes.
16th of April. So let's talk
Yeah.
about why it is that we tend to ignore or neglect voice care, just on a general note.
Mm. Yeah, wonderful question. I think, just the voice in itself is quite an automatic, sense or just like a form of expression. So a lot of people don't really, take it seriously until you just mentioned, something goes wrong.
Mm.
So, I think the biggest thing for me, just like, in just staying aware about like how your voice, functions on a daily basis kind of goes into some of the habits that, some of us tend to overlook. Once again, like shouting and speaking for long hours, or even whispering incorrectly, these are some of the things that kind of like put a strain on our voices on a daily basis that we
Mhm.
tend to overlook. So it's just being aware and mindful of how we use our voices, from our speaking voices to our singing voices, because like our speaking voices really do have an impact on how our singing voices, as it were. So it's just, staying aware of how you use your voice and not, falling into those habits.
Right. Okay, let's talk
Yeah,
about voice rest. What does that look like? Because when you
yeah,
mention resting the voice, it sounds like jargon to a lot of people because it's like, how do you do that? How do you actually rest and
yeah.
take care of the voice through rest?
Yeah, in simpler terms, just keep quiet. Honestly, I mean, that's the
Mm.
biggest thing. I think we fall into the trap of just, wanting to always utilize our voices and utilizing our voices incorrectly.
Mm.
Um, and, just the recovery of our voices is all dependent on vocal rest. So this is from a term that was coined, vocal overdose syndrome, right? We tend to kind of like strain and kind of like, be very passionate, passionate people. So we kind of like,
Yes.
that comes through in our voices.
Yeah.
So we kind of need to be aware of, when the voice starts getting tired, or when we feel a strain, or it's more challenging to speak. Then, as it were, you need to kind of tap yourself and call yourself out and kind of go and rest. And in so doing, you can stay hydrated as well, utilize some anti-inflammatory ingredients like your gingers and like your
Mm.
some teas are great as well. Some steaming is really incredible as well, just to bring everything down because it is a muscle at the end of the day. And any like any other muscle, you need to kind of like have it rest. So that would be my advice on that. Yeah.
Okay, you've actually answered my next question in terms of, just the role of food and the things that we consume and how those can affect our vocal cords. Back to using music as an example.
Yeah.
In my previous life, I was surrounded by many vocalists and singers, and a lot of the
Yes.
time they don't consume sugar. They are very particular about the sorts of things that they eat, especially if they're about to
Yes.
hop on a stage and perform. So
Mhm.
so if I want to perhaps use my voice in career, whether it's in theater or in music, I mean, some people are just so brilliant scat singers, soprano singers. They
Yeah.
have to go right up to the last octave, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah, what are the tips and tricks in music, that can be relatable to everyday life about how musicians take care of their vocal cords?
Yes. Yes. To me, I treat my vocal health as a lifestyle.
Mm,
Um, just like, people who are into sports or athletes, right? They don't just like wake up and, just start doing their thing. There's a
right.
process where they kind of like warm up their bodies, in order to have the best optimum performance. Same applies for the voice. It's an instrument, and I like to, in my lessons at the school, just like, start giving the students an idea of them being an instrument in their entirety,
Mm,
not just necessarily thinking of themselves just like as singers, because singing requires the entire body, right? So some of
mm,
the processes that we kind of go through in order to have, the best optimum performance are things like vocal warm-ups. Vocal warm-ups are super crucial. We have three main registers, right? We have the chest register, which is around here.
mm-hmm,
We have the mix register, then we have head voice and falsetto. And the aim there, a lot of people tend to have challenges with kind of like connecting all those instruments, right? All those
mm-hmm,
voices. And our job as singers is to kind of like give the illusion that the voice is one instrument.
mm-hmm.
So these warm-ups kind of like target just in connecting your passaggio, as it were, kind of like these bridges. Another great thing, we touched on that, is hydrating, right? Hydrating as much as possible.
Right.
Water does take some time to kind of like hit your vocal cords, but the quickest way you can kind of get moisture in your voice, which is really great for your voice, is through like steaming. So you can get yourself like this portable nebulizer, or if you don't have that, you can just kind of like throw a towel over some boiling water. Careful, with precaution, and kind of like, inhale that water just to kind of like get some hydration into your vocal cords. Another great way to prepare the voice is through rest. We do
Mm-hmm.
some of these warm-ups, but you also kind of like want to do some cool downs as well, right? Which a lot of people kind of like neglect, because you want to get the voice back into like a nice relaxed place so that you can do this over and over and over again. Yeah.
Okay, man, I'm enjoying this conversation with Cyril Nzimande. He is a voice teacher at Music and Mario and Friends, which is a music school, to be precise, based here in Johannesburg. Let's take a break and continue afterwards.
The whole population of Africa has been shocked to the depth of its soul.
For 60 years, Channel Africa has been the voice that connects the continent, telling our stories and sharing our vision with the world. This year, we mark 6 decades of broadcast excellence.
60 years of stories, sound, and connection.
6 years of African conversations that matter.
This is 60 years of broadcast excellence.
Broadcast excellence, rooted in Africa's heartbeat and looking boldly into the future. Join Channel Africa as we celebrate 60 years of broadcasting. Still strong, still vibrant, and still giving you the African perspective.
Channel Africa.
The Journal with Mateko Musito. Catch it on the Channel Africa app, SABC Plus, and on channelafrica.co.za. Weekdays from 9 till 12 p.m. Central African Time.
We're 21 minutes into 11 a.m. on the line with Cyril Ntsibande. So we can acknowledge today as a World Voice Day. Every single year on the 16th of April, we acknowledge the voice, talking about its health, talking about, how we can keep it vibrant, how we can, Cyril says, be quiet, okay? If you want to take care of your voice, you don't always have to have something to say. Just be quiet, and that's just one of the ways that you can nurture and rest the voice. Cyril, I'd like to play a game with you.
Oh,
Yeah, just ask you some questions, very simple, and you let me know the first thing that comes to your mind.
let's go.
Let's do it. If your voice
Yes.
had a personality, would it be smooth jazz or would it be kwaito?
Yo, both. I hate making choices, but both because can I explain? You know?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, please, because as singers, we kind of like are storytellers, so we kind of like wear different hats, and I do have my moments where I am like, I'm in the sultry, jazzy space, and I can kind of like, break that down and kind of go down into like a more rhythmic and percussive flow. So um, I'm both.
You are like me. Whimsical
Let's say,
people cannot stay in one box. We refuse to be boxed
yeah.
in. Yes.
Let's say Jaguaito, if it had a word.
Oh, I love that. Jaguaito. Actually, Don Laka came up with his own genre called Kwai Jazz as well. So why not?
Why not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the one thing that your voice just refuses to cooperate with? Whatever that may be.
Oof. 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 This is like a really, really interesting one because, there are certain foods, as we mentioned. So things like dairy, I love me a good ice cream, I love me a good chocolate. I have the most severe sweet tooth. So I need to make sure I stay away from like, things that kind of like dry my throat, things like that. Dairy, sugar, soda, um, yeah, like some
Okay.
hot foods as well. Yeah.
Screaming, shouting, right?
Screaming, shouting, all our favorite things. Yeah.
Yes, all the things we love to do. Okay, what's the
Yes.
worst thing people do with their voices that makes you just want to say, please stop immediately?
Ooh, the biggest
Ooh,
thing
cha.
is when like, ooh, child, stop. The biggest thing is like when they kind of like excessively like clear their throat. I can't even do it. Like it makes my skin crawl. And sometimes when like they kind of like cough excessively, and I'm always like, you can do that softer. Like you don't have to, you can softer, not to put so much strain on the voice. Yeah,
Okay,
that's one of it. That's
your
one.
your favorite voice hack at the moment. How can we cheat the voice, if you will, to make it, a secret weapon?
Yes, this is a really good one. You know how Michael Jackson used to speak light and
Oh, yeah.
very small, right? Yes,
I
but
remember that.
apparently in his real life, he spoke down here. So the one hack is to kind of like speak very lightly in your mix, right? Remember, we have the chest, we have the mix, and then we have head voice. You want to kind of like keep your voice light. You don't want to kind of like strain. That will make sure that you always have your voice at hand whenever you need it. Yeah,
Okay,
that's one. Yes.
lastly, and actually we can
Sure.
both answer this one. The most
Uh-huh.
the most amazing vocalist of all time. They don't necessarily need to be your favorite, but every time they sing, you're like, wow, where did that come from?
First person that comes to my mind, because they use the instrument in its entirety. I can think of Rochelle Farrell. That's the first person that came to mind.
Okay.
Because they kind of like go into their low register and then they go to like these whistles. Another great one is Mariah Carey,
Oh, yes.
Another great one is like a good, maybe let me come back to South Africa. A good, Zomodiga is a great vocalist. when we think of the males, Monet is a great vocalist as well because like
Oh,
their
yes.
ranges are quite wide and they use their voices in their entirety. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you like me, you are
Yes.
here, there, and everywhere. The first person I thought of was
Listen.
Whitney Houston. Whitney
Oh,
Houston
power.
used to do things that I have never heard in my life. And secondly, any opera singer. You know, people like
Ooh.
Pretty Yende, like Sibongile Khumalo, when she gets into that
Ooh.
opera singing, oh my goodness,
Ooh.
shut the front door. I
They don't
love
need
opera singers. Oh man,
opera singers are very special, very,
they
very
are,
special. I
they
love
are.
them too because they don't need microphones. That's the thing. With them, they can fill a whole cathedral and a whole concert hall with just their voice. And that's the beauty of, just like, having experience with all these genres and kind of like imparting all this knowledge because, you know, the voice is such a very vulnerable, very psychological instrument. But when you kind of like, get to a place where you are one with just, the gift, call it a gift,
Yeah.
then you can kind of like move mountains because it's a very, very rare instrument. We don't have anything to hide behind but our voices. Other musicians have an external source like a piano or an external object, but we are the voice. And shout out to all my vocalists and people who use their voices on a daily. Yeah.
Well, I love that. Thank you for shouting them out. You know, finding one's voice is a
Yes.
very tough thing to do. I know in my
Mm,
own personal story, it took me a while to find my own. So I think the work that you are doing as a vocal teacher, a voice teacher, I beg your pardon, at the music
yeah, yeah.
school is such important work because you're literally giving
Mm,
young people a lifeline. So if I want to be your
yes.
student, how can I find you?
Yes. Absolutely. You can come visit us at the school Music with Mario in
Hmm.
Bryanston. And you can just book an intro. Our intros are free.
Hmm.
Then we can just like, get a sense, just walk in. This is a safe space. I'm not here to judge, I'm just here to just give my own 2 cents on how to, improve and kind of like make you more comfortable in your voice, right? We kind of go through an intro lesson and we kind of detect all the challenges that you may have. And then we kind of like take it from there. And then we kind of give you some tools that will aid you in recovering and getting over those challenges. So yeah, give us a visit and yeah, let's make your vocal singing dreams a reality.
Absolutely. So beautiful. My president, thank you for the time. It was so wonderful to talk
I
to you.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
lovely
you.
rest of your week.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you. Cyril Nzibande, a voice teacher at Music and Mario. They're based in Bryanston in Johannesburg. So do check it out when you get an opportunity if you'd like to express yourself through voice, through singing. So, so important. It is 11:30. Let's check in with the latest in sports with Figile Longwati.